Hello, and welcome to Spirit Among Us. So this week we've been talking about how we have a responsibility in our lives. God has called us to work. He hasn't called us to just sit around, just try to get through our lives. He's called us to a real calling. He has entrusted us with His property, the gospel, and He calls us to share it. He also wants us to be the light of the world. He wants us to be His light here on this earth. And now, quite honestly, hearing this can be a little intimidating at times. I know I find myself asking, God wants me to be the light of the world? God wants to use me to share His gospel? Why me? I'm just a sinner. How can I do that? How am I capable of that? And you may find yourself asking some of the same questions too. Well, first of all, in tackling this issue of being intimidated and scared of the responsibilities that God gives us, we need to remember that it isn't us doing the work. Ephesians chapter 2 verses 8 and 9. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. We need to remember this, that when we are called to share the gospel, when we are called to share God's love, God saves people. God is the one who does the saving. We don't save people. So honestly, hearing that can take a big load off of our shoulders, because it isn't our responsibility to save. It's our responsibility to put forth the effort, but then God will use that. All God wants us to do is put in our effort to glorify Him, and He will take care of the rest. So that's an important thing to remember. It's important for us to keep that in mind, that even though we are doing work while we're here, even though we are doing God's work, it's really God working through us. And it's through His strength and through His will. This is all about God here. It's not just us on our own being called to work. It is God working in and through us. The second thing we can look at to make this a little less intimidating and stressful is the fact that God gives to each of us exactly what we can handle. Matthew chapter 25 verse 15. This is coming back to the parable here. To one He gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then He went on His journey. When the master in this parable, in the story Jesus gave, divided out His property, He was not ignorant of what each servant could handle. He knew His servants. He understood. He saw how they had worked for Him, how they had served Him, what they were able to do. And so He apportioned His property accordingly. He knew, okay, this servant can do this much, this one can do this much. So I'll hand out each accordingly. In the same way, Jesus isn't ignorant of what we can handle in our lives. He gives us responsibility according to our ability. Now, what this doesn't mean is that God only gives us what we can handle on our own. And God only gives us responsibilities according to our own ability. Because the thing is, God calls us to continually rely on His strength and Him alone. He doesn't want us to rely on ourselves, to try to fight through on our own. He calls us to look to Him, to rely on Him. So when He hands out responsibilities, He considers that as well. Not in our own strength, but in His strength. So in our lives, God has called us to serve Him. He has called us to share His love, to be His light, and to spread His gospel. When these tasks seem too difficult for us, we must remind ourselves that God is the one doing all the work, and that He gives to each of us according to our own ability. Thank you for watching, and God bless.